The kitchen table groaned under the weight of the feast. A mountain of fried chicken sat to the left, the golden crust still glistening with residual heat. Beside it, a bowl of spicy ramen sent ribbons of steam twisting toward the ceiling, carrying the sharp scent of chili and garlic. Betty sat perfectly still, her fingers tracing the rim of a ceramic plate as if it were a fragile artifact. Her gaze remained locked on the microphone stand, which loomed over the center of the table like a silent interrogator. She did not reach for the food, she did not lean in, she barely breathed. Across from her, the scene was entirely different. Cindy moved with practiced, fluid motions. She reached out, her fingers dancing over the recording device, tapping the gain knob with rhythmic precision. The equipment responded with a faint, steady hum. Cindy looked up, caught Betty staring, and offered a quick, sharp wink. The contrast was absolute. One woman was braced for failure, the other was entirely at home in the glow of the overhead lights. Cindy leaned back, gestured toward the microphone, and waited for the silence to break. Cindy reached out and claimed a piece of fried chicken. She held it steady, positioning it just inches from the mesh of the microphone. She looked at Betty, then took a sharp, deliberate bite. The sound of the crunch was crisp and amplified, echoing clearly through the small kitchen. It was a clean, precise movement. Cindy grinned, the sound of her chewing still audible as she nudged the microphone stand toward Betty. The metallic base scraped slightly against the wooden table. Betty watched the microphone as if it were a live animal waiting to strike. Her pulse throbbed at her wrist, visible as she reached out. She bypassed the chicken and chose a glazed donut instead, its surface sticky and smooth. Her fingers moved toward the microphone, but her hand betrayed her, hovering with a subtle, rhythmic tremor. Every inch she gained toward the recording head felt like a mile. She stopped, drew a sharp breath, and tried to steady her grip. Cindy did not look away, her gaze fixed on the microphone, watching the needles on the monitor jump. Betty tightened her hold on the donut, tilted her head, and began the slow, agonizing journey toward the center of the frame. Betty pressed the glazed donut against her lips and took a firm bite. She expected a soft resistance, but the microphone was far too sensitive. The sound of the glaze cracking and the pastry collapsing surged through the speakers like a small, violent explosion. It was deafening, a sudden roar that filled every corner of the kitchen. Betty froze instantly, her jaw locked mid-chew. She looked at the microphone, then at the monitor, seeing her own face reflected in the screen as her skin flushed a deep burning red. She felt the weight of the silence that followed, expecting a critique or a technical malfunction. She did not dare to move, her eyes wide and fixed on the recording needles. Then, a sound broke the stillness. It started as a low huff, then erupted into a fit of uncontrolled, rhythmic giggles. Cindy was leaning back in her chair, covering her mouth as she laughed until her eyes watered. The tension that had held Betty rigid for the last hour snapped. A small, tentative sound escaped her throat, quickly growing into a genuine laugh. She leaned back, the air leaving her lungs, as the sound of their combined laughter mixed with the faint, metallic clink of ice cubes shifting in their glasses. The mistake was not a failure, it was the start of the session. The laughter faded into a comfortable rhythm. Betty reached for a bowl of spicy ramen. She lifted a strand of noodles, the cheese stretching into long golden ribbons. She hovered them over the microphone, watching the monitor to calibrate her timing. She slurped, the sound sharp and rhythmic, while a drop of sauce slid slowly down the side of the bowl. Cindy gave a quick, approving thumbs up. Betty's movements shifted. She became fluid, playful, leaning into the equipment as if it were a partner. She reached for a chicken wing, dipping it deep into a bowl of glossy red sauce. The movement was a slow-motion arc, captured with deliberate precision. The crisp skin crackled under the microphone, a sound so clear it felt tactile. They spent the next hour testing every texture within reach. Then, Betty's hand caught the rim of a glass. Water sloshed across the table, soaking the napkins and threatening the recording gear. Both women scrambled, grabbing towels to stem the tide. They wiped the surface in a frantic, uncoordinated dance, their movements fast and clumsy. They collided, laughed until they were breathless, and finished the cleanup with damp hands and wide smiles. The tension had vanished completely, replaced by the scent of spices and the soft, steady hum of the recording equipment. The hour had slipped away, leaving only the soft, steady hum of the recording equipment and the lingering scent of spices in the air. The kitchen lights seemed warmer now, casting a gentle glow over the remnants of their feast. Betty sat back, her hands resting on the table as she looked over the remnants of the meal. She felt the rhythm of the room change. The frantic energy of the earlier hours had distilled into a quiet, focused calm. She scanned the tabletop, picking out a final, perfectly glazed piece of food. Her fingers moved with newfound assurance, steady and precise. She lifted the item, holding it for a second in the soft light, then positioned it carefully before the microphone. She did not look at the monitor this time. Instead, she turned her head, looking directly into the center of the camera lens. Cindy watched from across the table, her chin resting on her palm, eyes softened by a proud, approving smile. Betty drew a slow breath, held the gaze of the lens, and took the final bite. The crunch was deliberate and crisp, filling the space with a sound of total satisfaction. As she chewed, her eyes remained bright, reflecting the warm kitchen lights and the quiet success of the evening. The recording continued, but the work was already complete.